Hey everyone, Joe Brady here, and I have a fun image edit for you today. It's going to involve Lightroom, Photoshop, and also a plugin from our friends at Nik. Now this is one of my favorite trees ever. It's a little pine tree, and it's hanging out over the canyon in Dead Horse Point State Park in Moab, Utah. Every time I go to this place, I always go for this tree. Now what's interesting about this place is the tree looks very dramatic in the scene. The sky against it, and then the deep canyon below. In reality, what's funny is the tree's maybe, I don't know, less than 3 feet tall. And you have to get down on your belly on the ground with the camera in the right position in order to get this shot. The day we were here, it was kind of midday. It wasn't the greatest time to be there. And the raw file came in, it was very flat, it was very desaturated, it needed a lot of help. Also, I had to put some clouds in. It really needed a better sky to really tell a story of the place. We're going to start in Lightroom, do our basic edits there to get our color and saturation back, go into Photoshop, make a couple of fixes there, put in a new sky, and then we're going to send it back into Lightroom and then into Nik Viveza just to add that extra little pop. So enjoy. Let's take a look and see how it's done. So as I mentioned, I've got somewhat of an involved edit for you today, and this one is one of my favorite trees, and this is in overlooking Dead Horse Point State Park in Moab, Utah. And unfortunately, this was shot very close to noon, so it's very flat and kind of lifeless, and then the raw file lost a lot of its saturation. So we need to fix that, and we're going to fix that in Lightroom first. However, then the sky has got some clouds in it. But there's not enough. We need something more to break it up. And I was looking through my clouds and skies, and I found one actually kind of in the neighborhood, this one over here. And I think it has more interest. We're going to probably have to adjust the color, but it's a good starting point. So let's do what we have to do to this image first. And the first thing I'm going to do, because it's driving me nuts already, is the horizon is crooked. If you saw the position that you have to get in to take this picture, you'd understand why the horizon is crooked. Maybe I'll see if I have a video that actually shows that. So let's get the cropping tool and rotate so that our horizon is relatively straight. I'm going to bring up and down a little bit just so I can get as far left to right as possible before we finish in Lightroom here. So let's hit done on that. Okay, so at least it looks straight now. So what are the issues? Well, as I mentioned, the saturation is way off. So let's go to the basic panel and see what the problems are. First of all, actually the highlights, shadows, blacks, and whites. Let's take a look at the histogram. Yeah, actually the histogram's kind of fine. So let's go right to texture, clarity, and it's going to need some dehaze because there's a little bit of haze there. And then it needs some vibrance and some saturation. Now, down in here, it's still not showing the red that's really there. So for that, we're going to come into Use Saturation and Luminance, go to Saturation and click on our Adjustment tool and come down to the rocks here, and we're just going to push it up. And you can see all the orange being added back into there, and that's already looking a heck of a lot better. Now, there might be some lens distortion going on here as I'm looking at this. So let's go down to Lens Corrections, and I'm going to click on Enable Profile Corrections, and it doesn't see the lens. This was shot with my Fuji camera, and we'll just use the default, and actually that helped. You can see if I turn that on and off, it straightens things out a little bit. Okay, so there's our lens correction. So looking a heck of a lot better already. In fact, Command apostrophe to create a virtual copy. I want to reset this so I can show you side by side. So I'm going to select both of the images, hit the C key, which is compare, Shift Tab to get rid of our menus, and then the L key to turn off the lights. Once, twice to go black. And you can see it's already looking a heck of a lot better on the right-hand side, just with those little bit of adjustments. But there's more. So let's hit C to come out of that. Shift Tab, lights to bring our menus back. All right, so let's go back to the one that we are editing. So what else is going on here? Well, the tree itself, we need to brighten it up a little bit. It is the star of the show, so let's go back to the Develop module. I'm going to get a brush. And we're going to open up these shadows. Actually, you know what? I think we're going to do that in Photoshop. Let's leave this alone a little bit. Now, one thing that does happen is you might look at this and think it's tilted. Well, actually, the formation does kind of look like that, and it does make it look like it's tilted. We may decide to adjust it in Photoshop a smidge. But I'm going to turn off Auto Mask here and turn on the mask overlay, because I just want to lighten up the river down here. And also the top of this mesa right here. And yes, you can be sloppy with what you're selecting, because we're just going to add a little brightness. So I'm going to hit O to toggle off our overlay. Let's bring up the exposure a little bit, and we're going to add a bunch of saturation so we can start to put some of that green back into the river, because that river gets really green. And let's see, a little more brightness, maybe a little more contrast, and a little more clarity. Okay, now there's some light painting we're going to want to do a little bit later, but we're looking pretty good as far as the basics go. So actually the image isn't terrible, but we can make it a lot better. What are the distractions? Well, this whole foreground here is a little bit too powerful. There's nothing going on here, so we're going to either have to crop or compress that. We want to bring out a little bit more structure and color in the formations in the back. And let's take a look to see what we can do with the sky. So I'm going to Command click so that I select my sky. So here's the sky we're going to bring in, and this actually was shot in the area. So let's go ahead with both of those selected and go to Photo, Edit In, and choose Open as Layers in Photoshop. That'll take both the sky and the picture of the tree overlooking the canyon and put them both in the same file in Photoshop. All right, so here's our two images opened up. And you can see we have two different resolution images. That's fine. We're going to put the sky in the new one anyway. So the first thing we need to do is we need to select the sky. Well, in the past, you'd use the magic wand, a lot of other tools to get it, but now Photoshop has, under Select, Sky. Let's see how good a job it does and see if it'll get in all the nooks and crannies of the tree all by its lonesome. It is if it works, it is a great time saver. And son of a gun, look at that. In fact, let's get the magnifying glass, kind of zoom in, and it did a pretty darn good job of selecting that outline. So let's save this before we go any further. We'll go to Select, Save Selection. Let's save the sky so we can just recall it whenever we need it. All right, so let's hide our foreground. Let's just select the sky. So make sure the sky layer is active, and just get a marquee. I don't probably need the very top. Let's just choose, say, that much of the sky. Command C to copy it, or Control C to copy it to the clipboard, and we'll deselect that. And now let's bring up our main image. Go to Select, Load Selection, so we can bring back our sky selection that Photoshop gave us. Hit OK. And now let's go to Edit, Paste Special, Paste Into. And there it is. And of course, there's something wrong. That's okay. Relax. Command T is Transform, and allows us to just move this thing. So let's move it up. We'll move it left to right so that it fits. And let's bring it up higher and kind of figure out what's a good place for the sky to be. Actually, right around there. Do we want it hazy at the base, or more dramatic clouds like that? Actually, I kind of like it hazy. I think it fits in a little bit better. So let's put it right there and hit Enter. And that will put our new sky in place. And that looks pretty good. However, we're not done. Because if we click on the mask, we hold down Alt and click on the mask over in the layer, and you can see it's kind of fading in over the edge. So we need to fix that. So how do we do that? Well, again, here's our mask. What we need to do is put a gradation in the mask. So select the mask, hit the G key, which is gradients, and we need to come up to where it says gradients and go to basics. And if we do there, we want the one that goes from black to checkerboard. That means from black to transparent. And I don't want any of the new sky actually coming over top of the cliff here. So right here, we're going to go at 100%, and we're going to drag up. And that lets the old sky underneath show through. And now it's not impeding over the top of the canyon. And that's looking pretty good. Now, we don't need all this extra area. So if we Command click or Control click on the layer with our foreground, that will select it, and then we can just come to image crop. If you prefer using the crop tool, that's absolutely fine. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. All right, Command D to get rid of our selection, and that's looking pretty good. Now, I'm not completely thrilled with the sky color, so let's hit the V key, click on the sky, make sure it's the actual sky that we've got. Let's move it over, and you can see the color difference between the old and new sky. So let's go ahead and zoom in right here on that interface, and you can see the difference. Now, this is an advanced trick that's really cool to do when you want to match sky colors. You go to Channels and click on the icon for red. And what we're going to do is adjust the levels of the red, green, and blue channels separately. And you do that with Command or Control L. And that brings up the levels. And I like to use the levels dialog so I can see right above. And what we want to have happen is I want the right side, this new sky, to match the left sky. And you can do that just by clicking in the middle and dragging left and right, and you'll see. And I find it helps to squint. If you just squint at it and you can till the point where they kind of look like the same tone, that's it, you're done. Then hit the same thing for green, Command or Control L. And again, we'll do the same thing, make it a little darker, and just squint at it, because the textures are slightly different. That's pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfect, by the way. And then lastly, blue. We'll do the same thing for blue. Blue is pretty close. We don't need to do much to it. I would say about right there. And now when we come up to the top, look, now you can see, and again, we're looking at this at 350%. That's why we're seeing all this grain. But now the tones are the same. So now if we come back to our layer and hit Command 0, now you can see with the sky moved over, it's the same color as the sky that was there. So now we can get our V key and move the sky back over, and now it's the same exact color as what was there. And I can also hit the T key or the Command T key to just stretch it out a little bit so make sure it goes completely over the edges. And yep, that's good. And we hit enter on that. And if we want to get rid, we can pick another tool. Looking pretty good. So how can we make this even a little bit better? A couple of things. I want to burn and dodge on this tree a little bit. So let's create a new layer. I'm going to create new, and we're going to fill it with gray. And this, by the way, is an optional step. We're going to hit Edit Fill and choose 50% gray. It's going to fill it with gray. And then we need to change the blending mode from normal to overlay. And now we can see if I turn this on and off, nothing's happening. Again, I talked about this before. Overlay, the way overlay works is anything that's 50% gray is transparent. Anything that's lighter will lighten the layer below. Anything that's darker will darken the layer below. So watch. I've got white in the foreground. Oh, I'm going to get a brush. Just hit the B key. And I'm going to work it, let's say, 30%. So I just hit 3 on my keyboard. And I'm going to start light painting on the tree a little bit to lighten it up, because I want it to stand out in the scene a little bit more. Now, for these dark shadows, I'm going to go up to 60%. Let's open up these shadows a bit more. I want to make sure I stay on the branch. Don't want to have it starting to affect behind. Just these areas that got really dark. Let's lighten them up a bit. And it's happening in here as well on this piece of the branch. And let's hit 10%. And I'm just, these little pieces that are very light up on the branches, up on the top of the tree, let's add a little bit brightness to those. In fact, while we're here, let's go to 30% and just open up the shadows on this stuff here. Just a little bit. Now, it might not look like I even did anything, but watch what happens when I turn this layer on and off. Look at the difference. Look at how much more pop the tree has just by adding a little bit more light to it. It also adds dimension because it's brighter. It looks like it's coming towards you. So there's a couple other things I'd like to do to this image, but you know what? I think they're going to work better in Lightroom. We can flatten this image. There's no reason to keep the layers anymore. So we'll go to Flatten Image and we'll save it. Just Command S or Control S, and that will put it back in Lightroom next to our original. All right, so here's our image back into Lightroom, and it looks pretty good. And we could say done, but I want it even to be a little bit better. I'm going to send it into Nik Viveza. So we go to Photo, Edit in, Viveza. And if you don't have the Nik filters, you really want to have it. You really want to have a set of these because they make certain operations so much faster and so much easier, as you're going to see right here. I just want to add a little bit more clarity and definition, a little more pop, a little more color in certain areas of the image, and Viveza is going to allow us to do that. So here's our image in Viveza. I'm going to move the before and after slider all the way over to the left. The first thing I love about Viveza is what it's called structure. It's kind of like clarity in Lightroom, but it's different. It's got a different feel to it, and it just adds so much more contrast to those midtones. Also, you can work it locally. So I'm going to click on a control point. I want this whole area down here both to be a little bit brighter, a little bit more structure, and a lot more saturated. I want to not that much. I want to bring out the oranges that are really down there, and that looks better. If I like what something is done, I can hold down the Alt key on this button and drag it up to different parts of the image. So right there, it can stand a whole lot more saturation because there's not much to begin with. And let's take this and put it up there. That does a nice job on that piece. And then again up here, in fact, we're going to add some contrast to that and actually turn the brightness down, because since it's on an edge leading you out of the image, we don't want it to do that. Also, while we're here, I'm going to bring, right here, I'm going to bring the saturation down, just to take your eye away from going it. And the same thing here, we're going to change this. It's too similar to the background, so we're going to brighten it up. Let's make the area of influence smaller. We're going to bring the saturation down. It's going to change the color. And by doing that, it will separate it out differently from all that background stuff. In fact, while we're here, let's click on the river and see if we can put some more life into that river with some more saturation and brightness on that. Yeah, I like that. So hold down the Alt key, drag it to the other piece of the river, and I think we're looking pretty good. Now, the sky might have a little bit too much saturation as I look at it. So let's click on here. Let's get that blue. Let's bring the saturation down just a little bit, just to take some of that super saturation away. I'm going to brighten it up a little bit too. And I'm not sure if I'm thrilled with the blue itself. Let's see if we add a little more blue, a little less blue, a little more blue. Okay, so that's looking a lot better. Let's drag our before after slider over, and you get to see the differences. You can just see how it's added a lot more pop to the image much more easily than we could have done by messing around with it more in Lightroom or Photoshop. Still think the sky needs a little bit of adjustment, but I think we can do that better in Lightroom. So let's hit save. All right, so here's our image in Lightroom. I do think the sky is a little too cyan, so let's go up to Hue, Saturation, Luminance. We're going to click on the Hue slider, and I think we're going to pump it up a little bit, make it a little bluer. Yep, I think that's better. Then we're going to pull out a little bit of saturation out of that. Don't want it to go gray. Just want a little bit of it out. Yep. And luminance slider, let's bring that brightness up a little bit on the blue. Yeah, that's better. We don't want it to be such a strong part of the image. Then I'm going to bring the saturation down a little bit more too. There we go. It looks a lot more subtle there. And then our last thing, under effects, let's go to our vignette. Let's see a whole vignette. Let's make it a little less round, a little more limited to the corners. We'll feather it in a bit, and we'll back it off to, what do we think here, about 14 or so. And what do we think about the crop? Let's take a look at the crop. Is there still too much foreground here? Perhaps. Let's just bring it up a little bit. I think that's better. I think it's less overwhelming in the shot, and I'm pretty happy with it. So let's go to full screen, and that looks really cool. That's a great scene. The way that amazing tree just kind of overlooks the bend in the river at Dead Horse Point State Park. And when you consider, we started with this. That was our original raw file. And again, it's all about seeing the final shot when you take it, because I knew when I took this that I was going to be able to turn it into something much more like this. So that was a deep one, very involved edit, but when you understand what you want your final image to look like, these are the kinds of things that can take you there. Hope you liked that. Thanks for watching. If there's any part of it that you didn't like, fine. You don't have to use everything I show you. I do cram in a lot of things. You might decide, well, I don't like replacing skies. That's absolutely fine. Don't replace the sky if you don't like it. Just take the things that speak to you that you think can improve your photography workflow. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you online again soon. Bye-bye. So I hope you enjoyed that and you found some techniques and some thought process that you can put to use in your own photography. So I got two favors to ask of you. One, please subscribe. You'll get notifications when new videos show up. Also, you can see all the rest of my videos on the Joe Brady Photography YouTube channel. Also, please visit joebradyphotography.com and or photolearning, that's with an F.com, to subscribe to my newsletter. It's called Photo Friday. It goes out every Friday. It's for fellow photographers. And the only thing that I use your email address for is to send you that newsletter. So I thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you online again soon. Bye-bye.